I'm going to let them take their teeth out and yell at each other.
Welcome to the Archispeak podcast, the podcast for architects by architects, where we discuss all things about architecture. I'm Neil Pan. Each episode, Evan Troxel, Cormac Phelan, and me invite you in on the conversation as we talk about everything in the profession, both the good and the bad. Maybe you're considering a career in architecture, you're still in school, or you've been around the block more times than you'd like to admit. Join us in the studio as we gather around the water cooler and talk about this profession we call architecture. It's time for some Archispeak.
I died in South Africa, all the outline, my body in Tiffany blue. When I died, I drove riding and swam with the dolphins and Lisa Frank and you.
So welcome to episode 33 of the Archispeak podcast. I'm Neil Pan.
I'm Evan Troxel.
And I'm Cormac Phelan.
And today, before we get to our guest, let's hit on the friends of the show for episode 33.
Yeah, this week we had two new friends of the show. They donated together, a husband and wife team, and the donors are Steve Potaraki and Allison Ham. And they sent us a nice note and donated $23.14. We'd love to know the significance behind these numbers. So please tell us, Steve and Allison. That would be awesome. But thank you for your support of the show. And if anybody else would like to get their names read on the show and help support and pay for all of the stuff that goes into making this show possible, we would really appreciate that. And you can do that at archispeakpodcast.com/donate. And we'd love to get some new friends of the show or some repeat friends of the show. So that's it for this week.
And we have one of those friends with us tonight. Well, Evan, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guests?
So Marica McKeel. Hello.
Hi.
Marica is an architect in New York, and you run. Why don't you tell us about yourself and your studio, and just a quick intro for people.
All right. I run Studio mainly a residential firm in New York City, and we do projects all over. It's fun to get projects that are outside of New York City because then you're building houses rather than just apartments. And I've been in business since 2010, so just sort of starting out.
And you have an awesome blog.
Thank you very much. I worked very hard on that.
Yeah, you've really stepped it up this year.
Yeah, and actually I've got to say, well, there's a lot of work that goes into it, and I think that's probably my primary job, which is unfortunate for now, but I can see a ton of response, and it's not just architects, which I love when architects like my blog, because that means I'm doing a lot right. But it's also really nice. I've had some calls from it that, just kind of random people and actually emails of people that really like it also. So it's working.
That's awesome to hear. And so tell everybody what your website is.
It's maricamckeel.com, and I can spell that. I know it's difficult.
Yeah.
Maricamckeel.com.
And we'll have a link to that in our show notes. And everybody should subscribe to the show notes so that you get these links emailed to you every week so that you don't even have to think about it. And there will be a link back to the podcast where you can also add your thoughts to the comments. And you can do that on just about any page at archispeakpodcast.com. And then, Marica, how can people find you on Twitter? And then we don't have to do any of this at the end.
Oh, great. It's at ArchitectMM. Basically, you can find me everywhere at ArchitectMM.
Cool. And that's just one word, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, we've all been friends on Twitter for a few years now, and that's where we met you originally, right? And we've done a couple of Google Hangouts and No-Veg stuff, who are also friends of the show. So it's become quite a pretty interesting and fun community that we have online. And so I think any of our listeners who want to join in, we're a very easygoing crowd on Twitter and very helpful, very friendly, and lots of people talk business ideas and how to do things and, share experiences online. And I think that's kind of what we all have been doing and participating in for the past 2 or 3 years. It's been pretty fun. So I think this week what we wanted to talk about was the concept or the idea of inspiration when it comes to what we do or why we do what we do. And I thought this was an interesting topic because it's something that we in the creative field of architecture deal with on a daily basis.
And Evan, I want to start off by a note you had made, and this is a quote from Chuck Close.
He's an artist.
And he is an artist. Yeah, we'll have a link to him in the show notes. But he's got this great quote, and I thought it'd be great to start off with which is, "Inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and get to work."
Yeah, I love that quote. Well, because
that's a great quote.
And that's kind of what started this. Just me adding this into the list of topics that we might consider doing one day. That quote just really struck me because I think a lot of times people who do design have the excuse of not feeling inspired. And then I think it would be interesting to talk about that, but it would also be interesting to talk about how do we get inspired? Is being inspired even important? I think these are all kinds of things that I would like to chat about tonight. What do you guys think?
Absolutely.
What do you think about that quote? I mean, does that resonate, or is that something that rubs you the wrong way?
Well, for me, you can kind of claim that, just to kind of break it apart, inspiration is for amateurs. I mean, to be quite honest with you, to me, I kind of feed off of the initial inspiration in almost everything that I do and create. I mean, whether it's from my sketches to, any work of architecture, it's just kind of like that initial seed that kind of lights the fire and gets it going. And, so I'm not sure,
Okay, but what about... And maybe Marica could chime in here. Sorry, I always do that in my head because that's how I learned to say your name on Twitter.
I know.
Before I knew it was wrong. Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. And I actually was gonna be a friend of
the
show.
And I know Marica.
Well, I was gonna be a friend of the show long ago and tell you if you pronounced it right, I'd give you more money, but then I didn't do that.
So now
Nice.
You have to write her a check because you just ruined it.
Yes, I knew that was going to happen. So sorry, Marica. I hear what you're saying, Cormac, but I think that my quick take on that before I turn it over here is, what about when you have to be creative on the spot? Okay, so like you're talking about that spark, and I do think it's easy to start creating something if you have a spark and you're like, just you want to kind of run with that. But what about those times? Okay, we've all heard of writer's block, right? So it's the same kind of a thing. What about when you have to be creative and there's no fuel for that fire? So,
Well,
how do you approach that?
But I mean, normally, if you're, like put on the spot and you're like, all right, you need to come up and do something. And, you usually sit there and you kind of talk it out and kind of, pull, whether we want to call it inspiration or ideas or whatever from, the people who are either asking you to kind of like, be Johnny on the spot with some kind of like wonderful image or idea for a building or a house or whatever. And, you kind of are always trying to pull from it. It may not be something that's, immediate, but when you have that conversation pulls more out, it kind of, to me, it kind of helps create, the spark. So the spark's never really not there. It's just, you got to kind of work at it a little bit. So I guess, to finish out Chuck's quote there, you just show up and get to work. And well, guess what? Sometimes the spark takes a little more work than, just that initial aha moment. But yeah, so, I mean, I don't think that his, that quote really rubs me the wrong way. It just, you can break it down in two different directions. And I think I just did.
I think what that quote says to me, and I'm going to throw out another one, Evan, that you added by Pablo Picasso, which is inspiration exists, but it has to find you working.
Yeah.
And what both of those say to me is that when we see great works or, works that may inspire us, whether it be art or in architecture, what that tells me, both of those quotes, is that none of this just is your first pass at it on paper or on the computer. It's a lot of work. And at the end of a day or many, many days, you end up with something that is inspirational to others. And you had to work at it. And it likely wasn't your first thing you thought of, or even that spark that you mentioned, Cormac. It may start with that, but it likely turns into something completely different. And, you just have to keep working at it and keep trying different things. And that's what those quotes really say to me. They don't rub me at all wrong, because I think in order to come up with great work, you have to work at it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wasn't meaning, I was more talking about that initial kind of like what kind of cranks it up. I by no means did I mean anything about, or trying to forget the whole work part of it, because.
No, I was just saying what it meant to me. That's all.
Because every part of, like even just my little scribbles and sketches, I mean, as much as however they look or appear to other people, I mean, it's a lot of work. And, and sometimes, especially when I was doing that year long.
No, it only takes 2 minutes.
When I was doing the year long one, where I was doing the sketch, one sketch a day thing. I mean, you want to talk about hard work. I mean, just for something as simple as, sketching on a Post-it note, it took me, a lot of times it would take me, quite a bit of time just to actually come up with what I was going to do for the day.
Exactly. That's exactly it. It's sometimes you're super inspired and there's 3 or 4, and then one time you're sitting there, you got to come up with something, and now you got to think of something. So I think that's what Evan's trying to get at, is where does that come from when you're sitting there blank?
Yeah, drawing block, right? Yeah, because you're right. There are some times where you're like, you've got so many ideas you can't even draw fast enough, and then there'll be like a week or 2 that go by where you just feel empty. Mm-hmm. But you're a professional, right? And that's, to me, like, that's not okay. You've got to be able to pull from something. And so maybe that's something we can talk about next year is because I see inspiration as a tool, and I go to my toolbox every once in a while. And actually, I kind of see myself, I'm always pulling or collecting things for later. I don't necessarily set out on a path to find something that specific moment that I need right then, but I know there's certain things that catch my eye, and there's tools out there that we can use. But to me, inspiration's a tool, and you use it when you need it. But it's not something you need all the time either.
Well, Marica, where do you go to find your inspiration?
I was just thinking about that. I think, just like you said, Evan, there's so much more today than, like when I was in school, there was no Pinterest. The first thing I'd say is Pinterest, and I hate to have, that's such an easy answer, but like you said, collecting, and now there's kind of a way of keeping, whether it's Pinterest or Flip It. There's a way that I could now go back and find those things, and it's like, oh wow, God, I didn't remember this, and even if you're looking at a detail of a chair, leather and wood connection, and you're thinking of the way that the stairs work in your house, or whatever somehow there's that spark, and it may not be, you're looking at the chair detail and you're trying to design a chair, but somehow all of that just kind of gets your brain moving again.
Yeah.
But Evan, you put in another link, which we'll have in our show notes, about sometimes, going to a different place, changing your physical environment can help that.
That's huge for me.
Oh, yeah.
Huge. Or just even, maybe not even going somewhere else, but just moving, getting up and moving, like going for a walk around the parking lot or down the street or something. I feel like my brain works so much better when I'm moving.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It was interesting that, you say that because, a lot of times, especially under these, crazy deadlines that I've been working on recently, I'll just be, I use the term chained to my desk, for hours and hours and, don't get up, don't move, bathroom break at best and stuff. And so I was listening to an NPR, show that was basically talking about the importance of, getting up and changing your environment, even if it's something as simple as just a 15-minute break, just get out, go for a walk. And so I've been, ever since I listened to that show, I've been consciously making the effort to at least just get up and get out during lunch for if it's not, the entire lunch hour, just, even a half an hour. And honestly, it makes such a huge difference and a huge impact because that little 15-minute, half an hour break makes I'm completely refreshed, is a completely different perspective. It even changes, and elevates my mood, which usually, especially when somebody tells you to cut several $1 million out of a project, you sometimes need.
That never happens. Yeah, I think that's a big deal and not enough. We are the kind of, we work, at desks, we sit at a computer and stare into the box and, or maybe you've got headphones in and you kind of shut yourself off from the rest of the world. And I think the point, not only is it healthy for you to turn away from that for a while, but it's also, you get the oxygen moving, you get the blood flowing, you get your arms and legs moving, and it kind of just unkinks the rope in your brain, right? I mean, it starts to work things out. What do you guys have particular times of the day where you feel like you are more inspired or maybe you just think clearer? Because I know for me, it's like first thing in the morning.
It's that.
It's that, like, in the shower, I seriously solve so many problems in the shower.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I just realized that, like, you start to kind of keep track of that. And it's like, oh man, I should do this more often.
What's been interesting is the past couple of days when I've had the request to cut a couple $1 million out of a project. I've actually been thinking about the solutions while I sleep. And when I wake up, I'm like, oh yeah. That's going to work.
Your brain still is working on it.
And, I'm wondering if I can charge that time back to the project, but I mean, I was just like, oh yeah, that's going to work, and I get into work and I'm usually there, at least an hour before everybody else. And then I just kind of, start cranking it out. And then when everybody comes in, they're like, how long have you been working? It's just like, well, I've only been here an hour, but, I've literally been thinking about this for several hours.
Yeah. So why are there some times when we're sitting there and nothing is coming to us? I mean, what does that mean? Because to me, it's like, I honestly think that it's because I don't understand the problem. And so there's so many ways it can go. There's so many kind of options floating around in my head. It's not clear. I don't have clarity. So it's really hard to start, I think, when you don't have a clear definition of the problem. I mean, that's kind of, to me, what leads me to have a lack of inspiration. Because a blank sheet, number one, it can be an intimidating thing for a lot of people, right? Because there's so many ways it can go. But I really feel like it's hard to pick a direction if you don't really have a clear idea of where to start or where to go. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, that's probably why we don't typically do, we never do a project alone, and so that blank sheet to me, and I know it is definitely to you, Evan, is, well, probably to everybody that, is listening and talking is, it's that opportunity. It's that, to me, when I see a blank sheet, I get excited. I'm like, all right, what's next? Yeah.
Yeah. I find it hard to design with a blank sheet. I need parameters, something that,
like remodels are great, right? There's so many constraints you already know. I like them a lot. Yeah, I think it is a little bit easier than starting with a fresh.
Oh yeah, doing a new house from scratch is pretty scary. But I mean, you always have constraints. There's always either a budget or there's land or setbacks and other sorts of constraints to that. But yeah, in dealing with remodels, that does sort of set the parameters pretty close right up front. But it makes it pretty interesting to dive in and figure out how to solve that problem. And what you can do to try and do that, but a blank sheet just scares the pants off. That's not fun.
I totally agree with that. It's like the problem solving is that's the creative part. So that's the part where I guess that's the part that I love. So when you got to find the constraints, and if it's a blank sheet, it's like where you got to pull something as far as something needs to make it a little more difficult than you can do anything you want.
I think it's always hard to put that first thing out there, right, for other people to react to. Mm-hmm. That's always tough for a lot of people because, most likely, I mean, the funny thing is we all know the project will never be that, right? But we're always afraid to put it out there anyway, even though we know that's not what it's going to be, but it gets people talking. I think that's kind of the most important thing about getting the first idea out, right, is the reaction to it. But you're right that those problems that show up and the constraints that come later all really help you. So you don't need inspiration at that point, right? Because you've probably come up with a language and those constraints make it easier to answer questions, right? I feel like the more constraints, well, I have to do it this way because this is the only way that I can think of to do it. But I have to get around this problem so that I can get to the next one.
But then I find sometimes you get really sort of bogged down with that also, because you've got to do it. You know this. This was just happening to me today. I know what I need to do for this entry on this house I'm designing, and I know what the client wants, and I just therefore couldn't get past what really was not working. And I literally needed to pull myself away and think, okay, wait, let's go back and where was I 2 days ago, or where was I before I got so stuck? And so it's maybe even taking away some of the constraints sometimes to keep the design or the inspiration flowing, or your creative juices flowing.
Yeah. Well, where else do we go for inspiration? I think Pinterest is a great answer. I mean, it's a huge thing. I mean, I'm sure does everybody on here use that? I know I use it every once in a while.
Actually, I got rid of it because when I was posting sketches and stuff.
Yeah. I
was watching sketches get heisted and reposted and no credit, applied to, my work or anything like that. And I got really frustrated and
I think that's a big part of that.
Started to boycott it. So I kind of actually stopped using a lot of that stuff, only more out of protest than anything else, even though I know that there's a lot of really good and really creative things out there.
All right. So what do you use?
Well,
anything?
Yeah, actually I've got this. Well, here, let me kind of, so when Marica had started talking about, she goes to Pinterest, as one of her, kind of go-tos, and it's got some wonderful things. I'm sitting in my basement and I have my back towards my bookshelves with a couple hundred architecture books. And when she said it, I felt guilty because I was like, holy crap, I haven't cracked a single one of those books open in years.
Yeah.
Because I always default back to hunting it digitally, hunting something down, looking for something, I've got a pretty good mental Rolodex. If I see an image, I remember where it's at, or at least I remember how I can find it digitally, and then just kind of like run through, or even, in my books. So I do feed off a lot on imagery, whether it be from, other artists and, kind of getting inspiration about, the way that they draw something or whatever, or other architects, the way that they've kind of like, approached, as Marica was saying, if you're looking for like that one detail and it just, if that one detail might be the spark that kind of helps you. You just go and you look for that one detail, but then you find 100 details, of that one detail you're looking at that is a different approach to it, in probably 100 different ways. And you're like, oh, this is great, because it'll kind of help you kind of keep pushing yourself forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I hate to say it as much as I would love to say.
You hate to say, oh, okay.
As much as I would love to say that I would use those hundreds of books behind, but since I'm both literally and figuratively turned my back on them, I go digital.
Wow. What about you?
Well, speaking of
Neil,
digital, I mean, well, I have a Pinterest account, and I appreciate everybody who follows me there, but I've never actually pinned anything. I don't get that site. I don't know. Maybe somebody can call into the listener hotline at 415-484-8496. There's my reference to
help an old man out.
Shut up, Cormac. Anyway, so yeah, now you threw me all off there, man. I was on a roll. So Pinterest, I've never used that site. But sometimes, when I'm looking for, and I'll use this with my clients, and I believe, we've talked a little bit about this on previous episodes, but, I'll use that site houzz.com. And I find that's a really useful tool, actually, for not only inspiration, but to communicate ideas back and forth between your clients. It used to be that we would ask our clients to clip out things from the paper or magazines or anything hard copy wise, to kind of indicate what they liked, what they didn't like, colors, materials, whatever. And now that kind of has gone digital, going back to what you were just saying, Cormac, instead of looking at the books on our shelves, which, likely has a lot of that information in it, we go digital, and because that's what we're staring at these screens all day long. And, so we'll start looking things up that way. But I think Houzz and tools like that are useful, that not only can become inspirational tools, not only for you, but also for your clients to kind of help communicate to you what inspires them, so that you can help, design something that meets their needs and their desires.
Well, I remember the last house that I did, and this was about 2 years ago. First time I met the client, I went over to his house. This was the house we were going to demo and replace. And I walk in, and he has got stacks upon stacks. It almost reminded me of my stacks upon stacks of dwell and architecture and architectural record and all this other stuff. And thousands of sticky note tabs of all these different images of things that inspired him, of things that he would like to either see or a feeling that he'd like to get, in his house and stuff like that. And I thought that was great that he was kind of wanted to engage the conversation on a more substantive level of, here are these, he didn't really want to say, this is what I want. He wanted to say, this is a feeling that I like. And I think that's kind of what we do with, going to Houzz and Pinterest and stuff like that. And, to kind of, do a little round nose into our guest here. I mean, one of the things that Marica, you were doing, through, when it was Architecture Week, and you've continued to do it, and Nick and Keith are kind of doing it as well, as these posts of images and houses and things like that inspire you. And I thought that was when Evan posted that we were going to talk about inspiration, I thought that would be a great topic with you, which it has been, because you're always posting about just like a stair, or, and it might be a detail of a stair, or the way that the shadows have created, just kind of like this playful light on the wall, you know, and all this other stuff. And it's just, I thought it was really cool that you were doing that, and, you know, that it started to like encourage other people to start doing it as well.
Yeah, that is pretty fun. It's fun that everybody's gotten involved. But I have to say, I got a great response from clients or from potential clients when I started posting. People just saying how much they loved everything on my site, and they could see my style, and that was really them. That's what they really liked, and so it was just really making a huge difference in people, I guess, wanting to talk to me because they really could understand my style. So therefore it was like, okay, do a lot more of this. So
yeah, you're inspiring them, right? To think about like your post on stairs, right? I mean, a lot of people think of a stair as it's just a tool to get up and down from one level to the other. But when you put it on, when you focus on it, you're causing them to think, oh, okay, so I should think about this, right? And when I design my dream house, I'm going to have the best stair ever, right? And so how am I going to do that? And then, I mean, you're providing a service to them that's way bigger than just showing them 8 pictures of stairs. That's really cool.
Yeah, I've actually got a client that she's decided that her 4-foot stair isn't big enough. She needs 5 feet, and it's got a cantilever. That was actually the inspiration for that post. So she wants a 5-foot cantilever stair, which awesome. Wow. I can't wait to design that.
Yeah, no kidding. That's very cool. So it sounds to me like mostly what I'm hearing, and I think Cormac started to allude to something else here, but things that we can be inspired by. I mean, imagery is huge, but what else? I mean, to me, I think there's quite a few other things that could inspire people.
Well, I mean, one of the things that, you know, and I guess it's still, honestly, it's probably back to the imagery thing, you know, because when we're working on projects, whether it be an addition or a new school or something like that, you know, Evan, you and I do a lot of schools and stuff. I mean, what is the thing that kind of inspires us about that work is the interaction of, you know, the kids when they're walking around the school. How do they interact with the school and stuff like that? And then, you know, I kind of feed off of ideas of like, well, you know, here are patterns that I've seen, you know, that the kids do on a day-to-day basis, you know, just on kind of like their standard 1960s school that they've been going to and stuff. And here are, you know, both good things about what they're doing and like, here's some lost opportunities, and being able to kind of, use, you know, start thinking about, you know, well, you know, they really could be able to do something like this. And, you know, it's just not a, you know, the corridor isn't just like a point A to point B thing, but what can you do to kind of like make it feel, you know, better, or, you know, invoke something else in them, or make that, you know, that day kind of like just a little bit more refreshing for them. And so, you know, I kind of am always, you know, I always sit there and I do, you know, like my field survey, and I photograph the building and all that other stuff. But then of course, you know, when I can't photograph the kids, cause you're not allowed to, I just watch them and just, you know, kind of figure out how they use it, figure out how the teachers use it, figure out how the custodians and everybody else use it, just to kind of get to see what it is. But it, you know, so, I mean,
I think experience can be a huge inspiration, not only for me, like, but in the way you're talking about it, where you can actually see how people do things, and then you can take all of your other experiences that you've had and say, how can I make that experience that they're having even better, right? I mean, one of the things that I'm thinking of, as far as I was inspired last Friday by going on a tour of 3 different schools that I've never been in before. And we took clients that we're currently working with on a new school to these 3 different schools. And just to see their jaws drop open when they saw the way natural light can be brought into a classroom through a clear story window, versus the facilities that they already have. I mean, it was really neat to see them get really inspired, but it was also neat for me to be there when it happened, because me seeing that reaction that they had inspired me to want to do an amazing job on their project, and I want to make their jaws drop open. So how am I going to do that?
That's so true.
I agree. I think that it happens all the time. And so experience is a big way to get inspiration, through tours or through us going and visiting architecture, or sitting and watching behavior as people move through space. And then I think another big one is just conversation. I can be totally inspired by conversations that happen.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't have to be about architecture. It could be about music. It could be about whatever.
I was just going to ask, is anybody inspired by other people in other professions? And let me say what I exactly mean by that. In watching something like the Oscars, seeing the actors and the directors and the writers do such inspirational work on different films that, you see just a snippet of the number of films, obviously, that are produced each year, but, you're seeing some of the best work by other artists. And, in watching something like that, sometimes, can make me feel very inspired, or, seeing the,
can make me feel very inadequate.
Well, as somebody who's a musician, I could kind of understand that, but I'm not, so I don't feel so bad. I'm not an actor either, but, but even just sometimes using the tools that we use every day, like my iPhone or my Mac, seeing when Apple comes out with, some great inspirational designs and hardware or software, really kind of, when I see that, it's a little, checkpoint for me to sit back and go, okay, what can I do in what I do? I'm not a software person. I don't design, and I don't code or anything like that, but, I'm an architect, and how do I use that inspiration in what I see them doing, or actors or directors, in reference to the Oscars, how can I use that as inspiration to do what I do, and to bring that forward? So I'm curious, what other sorts of things inspires you guys? Marica, how about you? Put you on the hot seat.
I know. Didn't I go first with the Pinterest one? Wasn't that good?
Yeah, that's not
I'm just
enough.
trying to get you to talk more.
Other stuff.
I'm listening. I'm taking notes from you guys. Isn't that what I'm supposed to do next week?
No, you're supposed to contribute. Taking notes is for when you're not a guest.
Right. You guys talk amongst yourselves for a moment and come back to me.
I agree, Neil. I think film is a huge thing. I love watching movies, and I don't get to do it very often, so it's like a special treat. But like just the other night, I watched Gravity, and I thought cinematically it was an amazing piece of art. And I'm watching it on a television. I can't even imagine watching it like in an IMAX or something, because it was beautiful, and it took me out of my world. And I think maybe that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking of when you ask that question, is what else can take me out of my world. And I would also have to say that, a really great piece of music can do that for me as well, where it's like, because, I used to play music, and I played every once in a while, but I feel like it can transport you somewhere else. And I guess when I was talking about my clients that we took on this tour, it was like I saw them seeing themselves in their school like that. They wanted to give that to their students. And it took me to another place to see them do that. I just love to see the joy on their face, and it made me forget like what we were even doing right then. It made me forget we're in San Diego and some other school completely. It was just like, wow, how can I bring this to them every single day? But music can do that to me, and film does that to me too.
I was going to ask Cormac, being the cartoonist that you are, do you find inspiration in different comic books you might read or see?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually I find myself, every Wednesday is New Comic Wednesday, and always heading to the comic book shop with my boys, and we walk around, and I look to see what's interesting to them, but then hate to say it, but I'm a window shopper. I look at all the different covers, and just, whichever cover like really strikes me, like, oh, that's really amazing, or look at the detail, or the way that people just sketch and draw. I don't know, I have a weird sensibility when it comes to like comic book artists and stuff like that I actually like the looser, more kind of free-flowing sketching styles rather than like the uber polished. And to see some of like the more indie comics and stuff like that, really kind of get it, get my inspiration going, because sure enough, almost if I don't have the opportunity to sketch every day like I was doing during the kind of post-it note a day thing, every Wednesday I can almost guarantee you that I'll be sketching, because here I was at the comic book shop looking at all this wonderful work, and just kind of felt really inspired to pick up a pen or pick up a red pencil and sketch away. So yeah, I'm always doing that. And DeviantArt, the website DeviantArt is fantastic, because it's both professional and amateur artists, just throwing their stuff out there, and having the guts to really kind of just show their stuff. When for the really honestly, before I started doing the little post-it notes, you would have been hard pressed for me to ever show anybody any of my work. And then when I kind of did that and just kind of threw it out there, the reaction that I got from people was just like, you're pretty good, keep doing it. And I kept doing it, and I'm just was like, well, maybe I am all right at this.
Nice.
Okay, Marica, it's back in your court.
On that note, really quick, it's also so inspiring when people like your work. And, it sounds a bit shallow to say that, oh, somebody likes what I do. But that means so much when people appreciate what you do. And that's not only your client. And of course, they love, like Evan was saying, they could see themselves in that space, and you want to design that for them. That, of course, is inspiring. But definitely when people appreciate it or just, encourage you, you feel like it's like my blog. People seem to respond. So of course that's like, yeah, keep going. So that's great.
Definitely. So, okay. So maybe we can wrap it up with what do you do? What do you have anything where you need a certain ingredient to actually become inspired to get the job done? Like for me, there's two ways. Number one is tell me I can't do something and I'll figure out a way to do it because I'm going to show you. And then the other way is a deadline can definitely drive me to become inspired very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Those two are exact, especially the challenge one.
Yeah. I think that, a good leader could inspire me, to work twice as hard. Because I think typically somebody like a mentor, or maybe you work with somebody or near somebody who knows what buttons to push to get you to work harder. And a lot of times they could either inspire you, but maybe they just know what that thing is that you need. And like, honestly, now that I think about it, I think that some of the looks I get from a certain individual, are planned so that they know that I'll probably figure out a better way to solve that problem if they just give me this one certain look. It's like, that's not good enough. I know you can do better. Does that happen to you guys?
The deadline, that's a huge one. Absolutely. And also too, the challenge part, if somebody says I can't do something, that there's definitely some motivation factor there.
Yeah.
That gets me going. But then also too, it's just a challenge, sometimes within myself, can I do this? And that probably, speaks more to, like running a marathon, which I've done now a couple of times, and something probably, a little more than 2 years ago, I would have never even dreamed, that I could have done. and especially in the, the times that I've done them. And so, just having that goal in mind and then working at it, I think, which goes back to the very beginning of the episode where we're talking about, just show up and do the work. And at least for my running, that's worked. And, when you finish it, it's very inspiring to do that and to accomplish something. And so I think not just the challenge of you can do better, but it's more like, can I climb this mountain, so to speak?
Yeah.
And can I do that? And yes, I can. It's like, that's the next challenge, and I want to do that. And that can be, in my case for running, or even last year when I did several sprint triathlons. So, those are all different things that, definitely having that goal and then a deadline, and even with the marathons, there's a deadline there, the race is on such and such day, and you have to get the work done. You have to do it. Otherwise you're not going to perform. And so, so that means, getting up at 5:30 or 6 to get that run in for the day because you don't have any other time to do it. So I think those, Evan, are the two probably biggest things, for me, in which I'm on a deadline right now. So, it's definitely motivation there.
And the goals, just like you said, the goals thing, that's another big one. If you're going to set, it's one of those, if you say it, then you have to do it. So, as soon as you decide that that's one of your goals, you can't just forget it. So that's a big, I guess it's like the challenge, but it's not necessarily, if somebody says I can't do it, then of course I have to do it. Yeah. But if I, even more, if I set goals for myself, and, you set some goals and then you reach them and then you set new goals. So it's that kind of thing is, I guess that's also pushing me pushing myself, but, goals and then.
Yeah, that's a big one. I think that, I kind of go back and forth on this, but there's some goals that you tell everybody about, and that makes you feel like you have to accomplish it. And then there's the ones maybe you don't tell anybody, and, you have to stay self-motivated about and accomplish it. It's like you run the risk of failure, right? If you're going to tell everybody, but at the same time, like, that's accountability, exactly. Right? For people to cheer you on to make it all the way through.
Exactly.
I mean, that's one of the cool things about being on social media, especially with me taking the ARE tests. I like saying, okay, I'm working on this one now, because I feel like there is a group of people on there who are all going through the same thing together. You're not going through anything all on your own that no one else has ever done. And I feel like that helps motivate me and keep me going, because, man, there's so many times when you just want to quit because it's either so hard or there's so much else going on. There's so many things that we have to juggle in our lives, but there's that group of people where if they know, they'll ask, they'll chime in every once in a while. Hey, how's that going? And it's like, yeah, I guess I need to be studying. I like that part of it. And I feel like it doesn't have to be something even that big. It can be just a project you're working on and sharing about. People enjoy seeing that, and they like asking questions and seeing what other people are working on. And, the ability to share that stuff is a neat part of the community that we have.
I just want to chime in on one thing on that, is when you mentioned about sharing those types of things on social media, because, when I'm designing something and, maybe at my desk and I'll just snap a picture of it, or a picture of several different options, or, just sometimes rough sketches. I know, others, do this as well. And, you just throw it out there, and you think it's crap, but you throw it out there and you start getting some responses back from people, and it's very inspiring. And, sometimes it's like, oh, that's really good. And it's like, oh, I guess so. It is kind of good. But sometimes you're your own worst enemy, and you doubt yourself a lot. And, by throwing it out there and getting some comments back, sometimes positive or most times positive, and sometimes, hey, have you thought about this? And then you're like, oh, okay, yeah, let's take a look at that. And you kind of go back and forth. It's very helpful when you're in a small, one man or one person practice, to inspired and to collaborate. And I'm finding, social media has helped me do that. And so social media can also be, a place for,
it's a tool. Yeah.
It's a tool, and we've kind of hinted around it all night, but I think that also can be something that can inspire you.
Yeah, I think Pinterest and DeviantArt and the other stuff that we've mentioned are all kind of those tools that you can use as well.
Well, and Twitter, like you were saying before, I mean, that's a bit of my savior. It's like you, Neil. I'm in my office by myself most of the day, and so Twitter is the water cooler when I don't have you guys. So that's just where it's not only news and inspiration from everywhere and every kind of art and design, but it's also being able to talk to people about what you're doing and get feedback, and I think social media is a big all kinds of inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, one, it brought us all together.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know any of you guys from Adam, years ago, and now, here we are doing a podcast.
Was that the other host?
So what?
Adam?
Yeah, Adam, right?
Got it.
Adam, Evan, whoever.
We're slower over here on this side.
Yeah. But
remember that.
But I mean, and to just echo what all three of you have said is that, I mean, this social media is like, expanded my professional knowledge, and my professional reach, because I can sit and talk with other architects who are going through, Evan, you said it best, who are going through the exact same things that we're going through on a day-to-day basis, sitting, Marica, sitting in your office by yourself, you think you're all alone, and then you hop on the Twitter machine and start talking to people, and,
and then it's lunchtime.
And then it's, yeah.
And I've wasted half the day.
Yeah. But I mean, these are things that kind of, help in a way, just kind of validate the, just the stuff that you're doing, and, not really validate, but I mean, just, kind of like reassure you that you're not alone, that,
right.
the fun adventure that you're on is, everybody else is doing it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is a community. It is the cliched global design community, but everyone's out there.
But everybody's out there, and what's interesting is, when we get comments on the webpage, or, when we get emails from people who are saying, like, hey, we're from New Zealand or from, somewhere in Eastern Europe, and we thought we were doing, we thought we were the only ones who went through the stuff that you guys are talking about, and then it just kind of validates that, well, everybody goes through the same thing, no matter where you are or what language you speak. You're just, architecture and design is pretty universal, as we already know. And it's just kind of interesting to, have that conversation with people.
Yeah.
No, well, getting those comments is very inspirational for us to keep coming back every 2 weeks to deliver a show.
Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier too. It definitely is one of those things that keeps us coming back to it, because I think if you put work out there, like this podcast, you put it out there and it just kind of seems to be falling on deaf ears. It's like, okay, so would no one miss us if we were gone? Which is entirely possible. But we have gotten some really good comments that have made us think, okay, the next time we talk about that, we should look at it from a completely different angle, which is great, because it allows us to continue that conversation.
No, and so therefore, I think we should wrap it up. So please give us those comments. Sorry. And visit the website at archispeakpodcast.com. And there you'll find our Twitter accounts and the Archispeak. Oh, yeah, I screwed that up. That's okay. Evan will cut this out, right?
No, he won't. That'll be
this
the intro.
This is the stuff he loves.
Cut this all out.
That's right. Well, Join in on the conversation.
Give us more
And in fact,
inspiration.
Give us more inspiration by calling the Archispeak podcast line at 415-484-8496, and we'll threaten to share it on the show. Or maybe we shouldn't ever say that because nobody ever calls us except for Jess, who calls occasionally. And also, too, we're very proud to be the most reviewed architecture-based podcast on iTunes. So please leave us a review there. We enjoy those as well.
We would like to stay the most reviewed podcast on iTunes. You can go ahead and leave a review. That would be awesome.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Marica.
Thank you guys very much for having me on.
It's been fun.
It's been great to be a part of it. This is cool.
Yeah, and thanks for staying up late, hanging out with us.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it.
We definitely appreciate it.
It was fun.
So again,
They never thank me.
who?
I said, you guys never thank me for staying up late.
Thank who?
Exactly.
Is that guy, Adam? Adam. That's your new name. Adam, thanks for joining us.
So everybody go check out Marica's blog at maricamckeel.com. Again, the link's in the show notes. And follow her on Twitter at architectmm. And you can also follow Archispeak at ARCHISPK. And we'd love to talk to you to keep the conversation going.
Great. Thanks for listening, everybody. And stay subscribed.
Good night,
Good night.
Good night.
Adam.
Good night.
I used to shy away from the stampede. I'd hibernate, hunker down in my heart at all. To get good at the game, I had to grease up my riot gear, and that craving came when you crossed along, yeah, when you came along. Chip and dog dared me, turn the sprinklers on. Barefoot in the driveway, baby. Platform dancing, farm leg praising. Met someone who proudly tumbled, diving face first. Bad with chances, braving birthday soon. Oh, baby girl, Jim and Dog dare me, turn the sprinklers on. Barefoot in the driveway, baby. I get naked. What do I got for my birthday suit? My little piece of creation. I'm gonna shake my mama, get mama, get mama, get mama. Say thank you. What would I have what I want to do? I'm the first relation. I'm gonna shake. I got love for you, love for you, love for you, love for you. I got love for you. I got love for you. Love for you. I used to shy away from the limelight. I tucked my face, uptied my sleeping bag to build a better base. I had to fly my war paint right. I'm a better place since you made me upright. Lovers never fight. Triple dog dare me, turn the sprinklers on. Barefoot in the driveway, baby. Platform dancing, farm leg praising. Found someone who probably tumbled, diving face first. Fat with chances, braving birthday soon. Oh, baby girl, Jim Dog dare me, turn the sprinklers on. Barefoot in the driveway, baby. I get naked. What have I got for my birthday suit? My little piece of creation. I'm gonna shake my mama, get mama, get mama, get mama. Say thank you. What would I have what I want to do? I'm the first relation. I'm gonna shake. I got love for you, love for you, love for you, love for you. Naked. What have I got for my birthday suit? My little piece of creation. I'm gonna shake my